Welcome to a brand new episode of The Oracles. My name is Manelisi. Unfortunately, the superstar Oracle Z Mazibugo is not able to join us as yet, but hopefully she'll be able to join us along the way. Now, our guest this week is the lead singer and songwriter of an Americana band. These guys have been on some of the biggest stages in the UK alongside some of the biggest musicians in the world, some of which are Grammy Award recipients. Their experience with big name musicians, coupled with their incredible ear, places them right at the top of being in the running for one of the greatest bands to come out of the UK. They so far have a single that they released in November, and it is definitely worth a repeat over and over again. Ladies and gentlemen, this week the Oracles are honored to bring to you the lead singer and songwriter of the newest band to come out of the UK. He is one third of Small Time Kid. But I have a feeling that there will not be small time for long, for too long at least. His name is Dan Clark. Dan, how are you doing?
Manalisa, that's a lovely introduction. Thank you very much. It's very sweet of you.
Yeah, no,
I should say, I'm now, as of about last week, I'm a quarter of us because we've got someone coming on to play keys and sing some harmonies with us. So there's four of us now. So
Oh no.
I've reduced in percentage from 33 to 25.
I know that's good news. That's good news. It's always a good thing when you, especially with a band, when there's growth happening.
Yeah, it's good to have more colours in the palette, as it were.
Yeah, yeah. So I want to know why the name Small Time Kid.
Very good question. Initially it was supposed to be until I met these boys who were in the band. I had very short-lived pretensions that it was going to be kind of a solo project, and then I got these boys involved, and they were so good, and they had opinions and ideas, and they were good ideas. So it very, very quickly became a band. But I think I was just trying to think of something to call it, and I was thinking it was like a sort of underwhelming superhero. Like it would be a sort of someone who turns up in a cape, but he'd just sort of end up disappointing everybody. And it'd be the guy that you called if Batman wasn't available, and he tried Superman and he tried Spider-Man. So well, who's here? Oh, this could only be a job for Small Time Kid.
Yeah.
And then he just sort of turn up and they'd say, what could you do? And he said, well, I don't really have any sort of super plots. He just apologized, really.
Yeah.
So that's where that came from.
All right, and I understand. Okay, because now it's no longer just three of you guys. You've got one more guy that has just come in. But I understand that you have two of the other guys that were there with you. At least when I was preparing for this conversation, is Alex Bramwell as well as Oscar Reynolds. How did you guys meet?
We met, and it's funny, the other guy, Sean Keating, who's just going to help us out with some keyboard playing as well. We all met separately on the same gig, on a nightclub gig in London, where you have to, it's like you have to play floor fillers to keep the dance floor full, but they're all audience requests. So you're kind of playing by the seat of the pants all the time. Sometimes you're playing songs that you're only just hearing for the first time as you're playing them, and somebody else in the band who knows it better is kind of, you're just listening to them to see what's going on. So it's quite a challenging gig, but they were all variously on that gig at various times. And I sidled up shiftily to Alex and Oscar on separate occasions. So how do you feel about playing some hillbilly shonky country blues music with me? And to my great happy surprise, they didn't say don't be so bloody stupid, and they turned up for rehearsal, and then here we all are.
Yeah, because that's another thing that I wanted to ask about. You guys are from the UK, yet you do Americana music, which is very, very American. Why did you choose to go the Americana route?
Good question. I suppose, I think I grew up just listening to the same stuff that's on the radio as everybody else, but then it turned out that the bands that I was into probably had that in common, that they'd listen to that sort of stuff. So you start off listening to sort of chart music and whatever, and guitar bands. I suppose if you're a guitar player, you listen to bands with guitars in, and bands like Fleetwood Mac, Pink Floyd to an extent, Dire Straits, those sort of bands would be into the stuff. And then I was, when I was 5 or something, I'd be listening to that. And then you start realizing where they got stuff from. So you'd hear, Fleetwood Mac were initially a blues band in the 60s. So they were listening to all kinds of things like Howlin' Wolf and what have you. You used to listen to Dire Straits for a second, and then you realize a lot of it comes from Dylan, and it comes from J.J. Cale. And then you discover J.J. Cale, and then that's a whole other great thing to do. And you go off in different directions and see where he got it from. And, especially with Spotify now, it's like, you should try this. And then you do, and you go, oh, I like that as well. So that's probably the only reason why. It wasn't a conscious decision specifically. I just ended up writing like that. And in fact, there used to be sort of radio shows as well, like sort of country radio shows and blues radio shows that I'd listen to. But it wasn't particularly fashionable here. It would be just like a local radio station would do it. But there would be lots of they'd be playing some American stuff coming out of Nashville. This even sort of 90s. Country stuff they'd be playing. What it's like, you nick things from everybody, don't you?
Yeah, and that brings me to, because I want to go back a little bit, more especially I want to go back to your journey in music. Growing up, so you basically were listening to what everybody else was listening to on radio, but which musicians had your ear when you were younger?
Well, I mean, probably not a very interesting story for anyone else who's not in my family, but my grandfather, one of my earliest memories is when I was very, very, very small. My mum and dad were used to sort of every few weekends, they'd drive us down to my grandparents' flat. And he would get the dinner on, and while it was on, he had a little upright piano, and he wasn't a trained musician. He was self-taught, I think, and we weren't sitting around in a reverent semicircle. It was, the TV might be on or something, but he just played. I just remember being absolutely transfixed, and I know it's one of my earliest memories because I can picture it still, like the image of it, and I'm standing up, and the piano keyboard is about level with my eye line. So that's how small I am, but I'm kind of that high off the floor. So yeah, it would definitely be that'd be the first sort of time you're going, wow, there's something impressive going on here. So him first, certainly.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, I ended up. It's a long story. I mean, that piano was actually. It was a big deal because it was the only time I'd ever seen. He was quite a successful man eventually, but he was very generous. It was the only time I ever witnessed him spend any money on a material thing for himself, apart from cigarettes, which he smoked about 40 a day. Was this piano, and he'd only relatively recently retired by the time I came along, and it was his sort of one extravagance for himself was that he'd finally got the time to actually dedicate to doing what he always wanted to do. And as soon as it became obvious that I was, a little guy was taking an interest, utterly selflessly, which was the sort of mark of the man, my mum and dad started telling me, if you stick in, you do your times tables and you do all right in your spelling tests, your grandpa might see a way to letting you have the piano in our house so you could start learning on it. So it was the first recurring dream. When you first have a recurring dream, the first recurring dream I ever had was that there'd be a van would pull up outside the house, and then it was when you wake up from the dreams where you've achieved your dreams and you're like, oh, it's just a dream. Yeah. And that happened, that happened a lot. And so when it actually one day a van did pull up outside the house, it was a genuine pinch me moment, So as a result of that, my mum and dad, for reasons I now understand, they were extremely generous as well. I only realised as an adult that they were only socialising once every 6 weeks because they were finding money to send me to learn how to play the piano. But much to my immense irritation, they said, "You're not touching that thing till you've had lessons." which was very generous of them. But also, I now realise, having heard 7-year-olds bashing away on pianos, I can probably see there was a certain amount of it was for their benefit as well. But so I was learning like classical sort of stuff, which I hated, because they used to tell me you had to play things in a certain way. My mum listened to Dylan a bit, but she didn't really listen to anything that wasn't classical music in the house. And then when I started getting radios for myself and everything, then it started to be sort of pop music and that kind of thing from the age of 11. Especially when when I realised that a guitar was likely to make girls more interested in the piano, then that started sort of pushing me in that direction as well.
Yeah. And what? Okay, so I understand that you play the piano. You're able to play the piano, and you're also able to play the guitar. Now, are there other instruments that you're able to play?
Well, I mean, I thought so, and then an Oscar, and I played drums and bass on it. And you know, there's one thing being able to, in theory, you can play, but there's a very different thing in terms of putting a record together and think what you should be playing. If you've been playing drums or bass all your life, and they were like, "How about you try?" I should go. So yeah, I mean, in theory, I can cover those instruments, but not as well as someone who really knows what they're doing.
Yeah, and so I also wanted to actually, but I think you pretty much answered your journey in music, where you started, but in terms of getting into it professionally or taking it a lot more seriously, when did that start?
Well, not a day goes by because all of us have been making a living in various ways through music for a few years now, and not a day goes by when I don't appreciate that every time I get up in the morning, because it was, you know, a bit of adversity on the way really helps you appreciate things, I think. And I was very arrogant when I was an 18-year-old kid, and I didn't want to go to stage school. I didn't want to go to I mean, I don't know if they have them in South Africa. In England, they have these sort of session musician schools where, you know, it's sort of, it's Wednesday, so it's hip hop. And, you know, it's Thursday, so it's reggae, and it's Friday, so it's double jazz fusion. And it struck me, and I think maybe it's a totally different philosophy about what you think music should be about, is that you're trying to me anyway, I think if you're writing or you're playing an instrument, you're trying to develop your own way of doing it. So these schools are sort of like that Monty Python movie when the guy stands in front of the crowd and says, "You don't have to listen to me, you're all individuals." And there's the crowd in unison, thousands of people say, "Yes, we're all individuals." I felt that going to those schools was basically that, you know, like how can you get a room full of kids and teach them how to develop their style? Sorry, I'll turn my volume down there. So I thought, no, that's not for me. But now I realize the people that I'm working with, a lot of them did do that. And while you make your own education, what I didn't have, which they had, was you'd leave college at 21 and you've got a phone full of drummers and bass players and guitar players and producers and possibly managers and A&R guys and all this sort of thing. And I didn't know anybody apart from my pals that I had a band, like a school band with, who very sensibly, as soon as, like, you know, they thought, oh, it'd be good to be in a band because then girls are interested. But then they'd get girlfriends, and the girlfriends would be, what the hell are you doing spending all this time in a band? Get a proper job. So they all got proper jobs, and I was left sort of, well, I better find some musicians. And that took years of just, you know, answering and placing adverts on musicians wanted things and doing all sorts of day jobs and going on at the end of the day when you're knackered and you've been on a building site or a warehouse or whatever it is for 8 hours, and you get on 3 trains and 2 tube trains and 2 buses, and you walk 20 minutes to an industrial estate in the middle of nowhere with the rehearsal room. It smells of damp, and only to get there and find out the drummer can't play in time or whatever it is. And this went on for initially weeks and then months and then years of trying to meet mad people on the internet. So only after doing that a lot did I then sort of gradually over a period of months and then years sort of build up a network of people that you could work with. And then finally, I think it was 2015, 2016 or something, Fanny was able to give up the day job. And as I say, not a day goes by when you're like, yeah. That's that was, I'm really grateful.
Yeah. And do you remember the first song that you wrote? And how long have you been writing actually?
Rubbish. I'm not going to. No one will ever know about it.
Yeah.
No one's ever going to know about it. I was 14, I think. And I thought, yeah, I'll have a go at this.
Yeah.
And even at the, you're like, you read it back and it's the next day and it's that's rubbish.
Yeah, but do you remember what it was about?
It was about my grandfather, actually. It was after he died. But yeah, it was. I won't share it with anybody because it was painful.
Yeah.
And I can only remember bits of it, but it was it was with all the worldly wisdom of 14-year-old white kid from South London. Yeah, who's not really experienced very much.
All right, now moving forward to where you guys are at the moment with Small Time Kid. I understand that it's an Americana band, but within that genre, I think more actually, I think it applies to each and every artist that within whatever genre that they are in, they try to create a sound of their own, or they try to create an image of their own. What is it for with Small Time Kid? What sound are you trying to? How would you describe the sound actually? Let me put it that way.
Well, it really depends on which song you're playing. I mean, I can't sing, so there's a starting point. I mean, Bob Dylan can't sing, but I happen to think Bob Dylan's got one of the best singing styles in ever. So I mean, you're starting off from someone who really can't sing. Until recently, I was other people were singing my songs, and I was co-writing songs, and then I thought, no, I'm gonna stick at it. So it's an unusual way of singing, maybe. I mean, there's elements of guitar in it. Always trying to mend. So you don't want to do like a sort of pastiche or a period piece. You're always trying to sort of maybe put elements in from more modern sounding production, and yet still be as rootsy as possible where expenses allow. I mean, we just did this record in Oscar's little drum room, so we didn't really have a huge choice of microphones or even instruments. That was a sort of budgetary consideration. It's a source of frustration, actually. It'd be nice to have some really good acoustic instruments and some great microphones to record them with, but it's what you have to do now, is just sort of put it all together yourself. And, when we can get together some funds to get into a decent studio, then hopefully it will sound more the way that we'd like it to sound. But at the moment, it's making the best of what you can do in a sort of punk ethic, if you like.
And when you create your music, where do you generally draw your inspiration from? Where does everything come from to make you guys come alive together?
Well, the songwriting, I suppose it could be anything. It really can be anything. There are tunes that just sit around in the back of your head for ages, and then you after years of something being in the back, you think, why the hell didn't I write about that? So I think the only thing is you have to feel strongly about something, so it could be anything. I could have an argument with somebody on a bus.
Yeah.
Probably a good idea, that. Very inspirational. Anything at all.
Yeah.
And it could be somebody said something to you, or you heard a story, or you read a story, or you read a news story, or it could be anything.
All right. And now with because I understand that you guys have worked with some pretty big names. I don't know if it's the Small Time Kid as a whole, if it was just you, but I know that you've worked with Dire Straits, you've worked with The Script, Pink Floyd, and REM. How did you find yourself in that position?
Well, I should say I didn't actually work directly with the Script and Pink Floyd. I was working with a guy who had produced, various people had produced think it's two different guys that produced those artists.
Yeah.
So the first, Mark Knopfler of Dire Straits has a big recording studio in London, which he started putting together about 15 years ago, and his longtime producer Guy Fletcher, who I think he's done everything. He was in Dire Straits as well as the keyboard player. He's just got a sort of fan website where it's maybe for what you might call train spotters, people like me who's like, what microphone did you use on that track then? And he'll sort of answer people's questions. And this band I was in called Megan and the Common Threads with a great Irish singer-songwriter called Megan O'Neill, who was living in London at the time. We had a little bit of recording that we'd done, actually funny enough, with the guy who'd produced the script, and it was a very sort of pop country sort of treatment, and I wasn't a big fan of going in that direction, and we were looking for a producer, and I just, I think I probably just had too much whiskey one night, and I thought, I'm going to email Guy Fletcher. And, then you'd shut the laptop and have another couple of whiskeys, and then you go up the next morning, what the hell have I done? And there was an email, and I was like skim reading it, and at the end it said, I would be delighted to produce your band. And you're like, well, maybe I should have more whiskey, because that worked out okay. So that was really, I just emailed him out of the blue, and he was an absolute gent and a education to work with. You pick up things from everybody, but he was fantastic, and that was in Mark's studio. That we did that record. It was like an EP, and like a 6-track EP. So that was that side of things, and then the guy who produced Pink Floyd was he got a Grammy for, I think it was called Buena Vista Social Club, which I think Ry Cooder was involved with. And this guy was really old school. He was like the kind of guy who likes loads of stories about, I used to record the Beatles all the time. And he was like, tell us more about that.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't get very much work done in the studio because you'd be going, tell us more about that. And then he'd be like, I would, yes, I was in the pub with McCartney between takes, and girls would come up to us and they'd be like, is that Paul McCartney? I'd say, oh, no, that's my mate, Ron. No, he gets that a lot, actually. Yeah. So he was great. Jerry Boyce, he was called that. He was an older guy. But, an absolute pleasure to work with. So, just through various projects, you end up working with a bunch of people.
Yeah. But how... how mind-blowing is it to hear a record from like the Dire Straits or the script, and you're able to, or rather their producers, just sitting there and knowing that this person has worked with Pink Floyd, they've worked with REM. How mind-blowing is that for you?
It's definitely a buzz. It's like you were in your bedroom as a kid playing along to these records, and that's how you I didn't get any guitar lessons. I just wanted to work it out for myself, which fortunately I was able to, because I was sort of left to my own devices with that. But and you're sort of, when you're 12, you are sort of thinking, wouldn't it be great to play with these guys? And then when you do, it's just whew. So it's another dream come true kind of moment, and it's nice. But then it's once you're in the studio, then it's a level playing field, because it's a new song and it's a new production, and everyone's going to bring to it what they can bring to it, and you don't feel particularly uncomfortable working with people, because they're just. The other thing, if people are good, it feels effortless. That's the others. They're really good at what they do. But it's a buzz, and it's a pleasure, and it's you get a lot of fun doing it. It's great.
Yeah, and I also understand that you guys had something with the TV show Nashville. What's the story behind that?
That was with Megan, actually, who because I was co-writing songs with her for a bit. And it was funny enough. It's funny how these things work, that the things that you get success with are the things that you don't really expect. It was the very first song that Megan and I wrote together in a freezing cold shared student house in Deptford in southeast London. And it was like, I think it was don't know how this worked. It was like an ex-brothel or something, this house, which goodness knows how, being that freezing. And I remember we were like writing it. We had our coats on in the living room because it was drafty. And I'd met her the previous week, and we thought, well, we'll get together, see if we can come up with anything. And we wrote it pretty much in about the time that it took to play it. I played, she sang a melody, we fixed some words. I think I ended up with some of the words in the chorus, and I think she'd come up with the verse and the concept of it, and we sort of, all right, well, that'll do. And then the guy who actually produced the script, he was the guy who produced that record. And, nothing happened for a year, and then somebody said, her management said, the producers of Nashville want you to sell this song to them. And I think I was cleaning my teeth at the time. I was just like, oh, yeah, okay. And then that sort of sunk in. It was actually, that's quite a big deal, isn't it? Because I'd heard of the show, but I hadn't ever seen it. So, yeah, it was just a random, I don't know what the connection was, or they just heard it, but it ended up being on an episode, and it's apparently some pretty high quality songs have been on that thing as well. So you kind of go, all right, we're in a nice company. But it was a complete accident. There was nothing really to do with me. You write the song and it grows its legs and it trots off and it does whatever it's going to do, and it's nothing to do with me at the end of the day.
Yeah, and because I'm also curious about the royalties and the masters of a song when it happens that way, because as you say that the producers of Nashville asked to buy the song from you guys. So when they do buy it, how does it work? Do you still get royalties from that, or you get absolutely nothing from it?
No, I mean, well, it paid for my then fiance's engagement ring, put it that way.
Yeah.
There was a decent amount of money. I think you had to sign something, and it depends on how much clout your management have, I think, about whether you can demand more or have different deals. And I think we just went, yeah, okay, yeah, we'll do it. So yeah. I don't know how competitive our deal was, but as I say, it was a nice thing to be able to give somebody an engagement ring made out of a song. That was a nice thing to do.
Yeah. No, I think I see.
I say my then fiance, I'm right, but yeah,
oh, yeah.
I should clarify that. Yeah. Now not my fiance anymore.
Yeah. Now, I'm also curious about, you have been a roadie for Beyonce, if I'm correct. Please tell us about that. What happened for you to, because you also say that it's a bit of a long story. Please tell us about that.
Yeah, put a stage up for her, and she never said thanks. But in fairness to her, there were about 60. So it was one of the thousands of things that I did to scrape a living when I was trying to get bands together and trying to get it together to, wanting to be a musician. And it was like a crew of people who would do various. They'd be building jobs, and you might be doing an exhibition center one day, and then I think we did Beyonce, and we did Green Day, and we did Muse, I think. And it's these big arena things. I was very naive. I didn't realize that if you go and play somewhere like the O2 in London or Wembley Arena or something like that, I thought that the artists would probably they bring their instruments, and they might bring some extra amplification, and they might bring the odd extra bit of lasers for the light show. And it turns out it's just an empty concrete box, and everything arrives in 17 articulated lorries and has to be unloaded at 7 a.m, and there are no prizes for being late because 10,000 people want to know what's happening if you're not ready for showtime.
Yeah.
And these American touring crews they're extraordinary professionals, because we were what I now, being in the industry a bit, I know this is a euphemism. We were local crew.
Yeah.
And local crew is a euphemism for blithering idiots, is what that is. So it's the people who, these amazing techs who tour with these shows, they can not only unload these 17 articulated trucks, and have everything built from scratch, including the stage, the lighting rig, the whole scaffolding system that the lighting and the PA and everything is hung from, and all those things, and they're all plugged in and line checked and working and sound checked by the evening. It's incredible. But I would have thought one of the biggest challenges is ordering lummoxes like us around, because it's just local crew is unskilled, dumb muscle that you go, you take that over there, you pick that up, put that over, you 10 people pick up that gantry and winch it up here, and you know, you've got to deal with gibbering imbeciles a lot of the time, of who and I was one. I mean, it's a miracle more people don't get injured. There was one occasion where you know, these big stages, they're like 18 foot big in an arena, and there's the end of the show, they're packing down just as fast to get to the next town, and there was a big bass amp the size of an American refrigerator on, like in a flight case on wheels, and someone said, yeah, you two, you get that down, might sort of, and they just pushed this thing down. But bear in mind, it's about as heavy as a small family car, and it's traveling at quite a rate when it goes. People actually literally have to dive out the way. It was alarming, but yeah, it was an eye opener. It was a real eye opener to have what goes on, and I was just able to just keep quiet and observe, which is always nice when you're writing things. Just to see what people are out and how they're all kind of relating to each other.
Yeah, but also for you guys being being in that position where you're basically you're a roadie for a show like that, what happens with you guys during the show? Are you able to watch, or are you still busy working?
No. So you kind of you have a very early start, so you've got to be there about like 7 a.m. You probably work for about 5 or 6 hours. Then the professionals take over when you've actually got the thing built, and then they line check, sound check, you know.
Yeah.
These people who can dismantle the 96 channel mixing desk in 30 seconds to showtime. They do the thing, and then you come back at the end of the show, and then assist with the dismantling of everything, and then they crack on to the next town. So no, we didn't get to meet Queen Bee. So you know, what a shame. But I don't imagine she had a huge amount of time to say, yeah, cheers, thanks,
Yeah.
thanks 120 times.
Yeah, but you didn't even get a chance to watch the show.
We got pretty close to it. So. Sorry?
Yeah, you didn't even get a chance to watch the show.
No. But I suppose if you did, then there'd be like it'd be 120 tickets that they're not going to make their whatever it is days per ticket on. So yeah, it's a shame. I would have liked it. It was good to. I mean, it was just amazing to see the whole rig and the whole setup and everything was amazing enough. But no. So if you're watching Beyonce, yeah, just a couple of tickets. Me and the missus will go. You know.
Yeah.
I'm sure she gets this a lot, right? I imagine she'll be watching like this show more often than she's not. So
Yeah. I've seen some comments from people like her and Beyonce cheering us on. I mean, her and Jay-Z. So yeah, she's definitely watching.
I don't imagine they talk about very much else.
Yeah. Now, I want to get into the music. You released a single called "Now It's Gone." I think that was in November, and that, I think, if I'm correct, that's your debut single. Please tell us about it.
Well, I didn't want to put it out at all. It's another one of these things where you write a song, and I was really not sure about it. And I played the band a bunch of things, and they were like, "Oh, you should record that one." I was like, all right, well, you know best. And then we'd recorded a bunch of songs, and then the people who were helping us out with the management side of things, they said, "Oh, that should be the first thing that you put out." And I was like, all right, well, that's fine, because then, if it doesn't do well, I told you not to. And if it does do well, I'm the genius who wrote it, and I always told you it was amazing. So you can't lose, really. But I mean, yeah, To be honest, I'm sick of the damn thing. I want to get onto. I think we've got plenty better songs out there, but we put it all right, and it seems to have done all right. I keep saying at gigs, I don't know who's listening to it. There's a few, like 10,000 views or something, or streams on Spotify, and I assume they must be all Russian bots or something. If you listen to them and trace all the streams somewhere, it's probably just a machine somewhere humming in binary. Yeah, it seems to have done okay.
Yeah. No, because I actually listened to it a couple of times, and I'm really enjoying it, especially for someone who doesn't generally listen to Americana music. I actually quite enjoyed it, and with whatever's gonna come, I'm pretty sure that it's gonna do just as good, if not a lot better. But yeah, I'm looking forward to what you guys are going to uh, give us coming going forward. But
Well, I can guarantee you, as far as I'm concerned, it'd be much better because I
yeah,
don't remember that I recorded it in the first place.
yeah. When are we going to expect like a full project or full body of work?
Well, it's all the songs are all there, and there are some recordings that are there as well. But I mean, every time I do a new project, like the whole scenery's changed again. So I mean, now the people who seem to know what they're talking about say, well, don't put the whole album out at once, because then you sort of use up all your publicity and nobody really cares anymore. So the idea is that you put a single out every few months and just keep doing it, and then you can keep recording songs in the background, and you've got a whole bunch of things that you can put out. So we're going to do one. I think we're going to put something out in June. We might put something out at the end of the summer, and we'll keep doing it every few months, just to see how things are going. And already, I mean, promoters are starting to. So it's quite difficult when you're starting from scratch again. That's the trouble with co-writing with other people, or other people write your songs, is that when life happens and people move out of town or they move countries, as happened with some people, and then you're like, well, I've got to start with a new project now and start again with a new fan base, and it's quite tricky. And now, fortunately, because the single's done all right, then the promoters are kind of, oh, it's done okay then. Oh yeah, we might see a way to get you on. So it's getting a lot easier to get decent shows. So we got one in June, I think, and we've got at Americana kind of night called What's Cooking in London. We've got one in July at the 100 Club in London, which is a reasonably famous venue that's got a bit of a history behind it. And that's so the first one's an Americana night. The second one's, I think they call it Tuesday Blues. It's sort of broadly speaking a blues night. Obviously, we're not trad blues or anything like that. I think, if anything, the first record that we put out is not very representative, because there's more bluesy stuff than that one to come. But we'll do those two shows, and then we're kind of we're adding shows as we go along, sort of thing. It'll just sort of build from there.
Right. And what are your aspirations musically as a band? Where do you want to see Small Time Kid go?
I mean, musically or commercially? Musically,
Yeah.
I mean, just want to make the best record that you can. You mean in terms of the money, or in terms of,
No, I mean like in terms of what what you want to see a Small Time Kid achieve. Like when you actually sit back and think about yourself as a musician, or you think of Small Time Kid, where do you picture the band going?
well, I mean, I think and the other lads probably say this as well. Like when you're playing music full time, you have to sort of do a lot of different stuff. And in many ways, even though you've given up the day job, quite a lot of the other sort of stuff that you're doing musically is partly a sort of day job, in that you'd like to be writing your own music and putting it out and playing your own stuff. And certainly in the first instance, commercially and economically doesn't make very much sense, because the number of people coming to see you initially is not, and certainly with streams, you get my royalty statements of 0.0000 whatever it is per stream.
Yeah.
So the aim really is to spend less time doing the other stuff and more time doing this generally. But I mean, I'm constantly reminded of this. A friend of mine is Irish. Her dad is one of the most successful musicians in Ireland, and he's played with Van Morrison and various other people. Like, he's incredible. And we went to see him a few years ago with his band do a show at the Royal Festival Hall in London, which is a very prestigious 2,000-3,000 capacity concert hall. And they were finishing up like a 2-3 week tour of similar sized venues in European capital cities all over. And he invited us backstage for a drink in the backstage bar. And I said, the tour's over. What are you up to next? And he said, funny you should say that. I'm playing a wedding next week. And he said, I'll never forget it. He said, the definition of success in the music industry is staying in it. And that's really, I think, all you can ask for. So really, as far as the band is concerned, what we want it to do is spend a little less time maybe playing club gigs and more time on the band. But that will happen as the band sort of can take over from the other sources of income. And broadly, you get some income from royalties, and you get some income from production, and you get some income from playing on other people's tours and records, and some income from playing clubs, and then occasionally the odd wedding. But ideally, the thing to do that you really want to do is write your own songs, put them out, and spend less time on the other stuff and more time on the song.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that I guess it makes sense, and I kind of get it when he says that staying in music. What did he say? Like
He said the definition of success in the music industry is staying in it.
Yeah.
I mean, so many people have to get day jobs. Only the other day I was reading something, and I don't know how successful they were in South Africa, but there was a "Where Are They Now" kind of feature on bands that I can remember when I was a kid being successful around the sort of that sort of early 2000s guitar bands thing, around the Strokes and the Libertines, and that was a sort of phenomenon at the time. And I remember this particular band were on, like, if you looked at the bills for the big festivals like Benicassim and Glastonbury and everything, they were right up the top there, and they were playing to huge crowds. And there was an interview with the guy who was the singer in that band, and he pretty much said, we had a great couple of years. We were the next big thing, and then the next year we put another record out, and somebody else was the next big thing. And so we found it a little more difficult. And the next year we put another record out, and we kind of got dropped by a record label. And then he said, like 5 years after it all started, we all got jobs again. And so you realise that the reality, even for people who are genuinely, by any definition, they've made it, is most people have to then still, that's not going to pay you a living for a lifetime. Yeah. So the idea is really to have a broad enough reach that you can do music to pay the rent, whatever it is that you're doing, because it's better than waiting tables or carrying bricks.
Yeah. Yeah, no. I actually love that. I love that, and I don't want to add anything else to it, because there's just so much to it, and there's so much to learn from what you just said. And it also makes me think about this podcast as well, that if we're able to stay in it, we're able to make it work, make it also commercially viable, then that would consider that to be a success.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. But that's pretty much all from me. I really had a good time talking to you, Dan. I don't know if you have anything else that you want to add on.
No, I don't. I think I've bored everybody rigid for however long it's been now. If you want any, as I say, any ill-educated, ill-informed opinions that haven't been very well thought out, then just give me a call. You'll get hours of it out of them.
Yeah. Yeah, but I'm looking forward to talking to you again, and I really believe in Small Time Kid. I really believe in the music that you guys are doing, and we really wish to see you on huge stages. I mean, you've already been at the O2 performing there, but I think as backup singers. But we really look forward to seeing Small Time Kid headline major events and major stages, and be a hero to other kids that are also trying to get into music, and inspire those kids to do as greatly as you guys will do.
Well, watch this space. Yeah, don't get us to give kids any advice. That's the last thing. Don't listen to me, as we've established. like when I was a kid, don't follow my career path. It would be a lot easier to do it differently. But there you are.
Yeah, Dan, it's been a good time. I'm looking forward to actually talking to you again, and hopefully Z will be here and we'll actually be talking to you in person and not over Zoom. But I'm looking forward to that time again.
Me too. Thank you very much for
All
having
right.
us on. It's been an absolute pleasure chatting with you.
All
Cheers.
right. Thank you very much, Dan. So that is it from the Oracles today. But we'll be back again, and hopefully we'll have another guest again next week. But if you haven't subscribed to the channel as yet, please do so. Please interact with us. We'll interact back. We'll get in touch with you as well. And just watch the space. Look out for what we're going to bring you next. Until next week, have a good one. Cheers.